Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to a jam-packed episode of GoJo and Golic. We got a banger coming up here. We'll look ahead to the divisional round in the NFL. Who has the most to gain, and which underdog has the best shot of pulling off an upset for the best weekend of football? And speaking of the best weekend of football, the College Football Playoff National Championship will cap it off on Monday night. Has the new College Football Playoff expanded format already exceeded all expectations? And don't look now, but is there competition on the horizon for the NBA? All that and more coming up on GoJo and Golic right now. Mike Golic Sr. here. We got a great show for everybody. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and watch us live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, and all the other fine places you can see us here. Fun group of guests coming up today on the show. The Hall of Famer, one of the greatest defensive backs of all time, Ed Reed, set to join us here in the second hour, and Fighting Irish fans rejoice. Your quarterback, Riley Leonard, going to join us as well today as he finishes up preparation with the team in South Bend and gets ready to head down to Atlanta. Dad, where we'll be coming up this Monday here, although you got the busy weekend here. We've talked about how great the divisional round weekend is, having all the NFL games lead directly into the CFP game, and you're pulling double duty right now. You're calling one of the divisional round games and then trying to make your way down to Atlanta to hopefully watch Notre Dame win a national championship. So how are you feeling and prepping for a big weekend for you personally in football?
Well, yeah, one is prepping, literally for a game, calling a game, and the other is prepping emotionally to see my Fighting Irish try and win a national championship. They haven't done it since 1988, so two certainly different sides to it. I pulled duty for the last divisional game Sunday night, so I can't get to Atlanta until I have to do the show, our show, Monday morning from my hotel in Buffalo. And luckily got like one of the last seats on a flight going to Atlanta for those of us that are actually flying in on game day. I land at like 3 or 3:30 on game day in Atlanta, where, oh, by the way, it's going to be freezing cold, but that game is in a dome, but just for walking around purposes.
Well, I was
going to
say for your weekend, you're going to be freezing cold overall, because isn't the Buffalo, the forecast 14 degrees and snowy there, which is kind of the theme for divisional weekend in general. Kansas City, Philadelphia, and Buffalo all expecting cold temperatures, the latter two expecting snow. So I have hope you packed the parka, Dad, because you're in for it this weekend, man. Atlanta too, I can't believe.
No, you know me. I like to pack only a carry-on when I do these games, so I try and pack efficiently. I drive your mother nuts when I say I got to pack light. So no parka. I'll layer with a lighter jacket on top. Yeah, wind chill is supposed to be in the single digits in Buffalo. So it's going to be a cold few days, no doubt about it. And fingers crossed on travel that I have no travel issues too. But yeah, going to be a busy but a fun weekend. I'm really looking forward to calling a Baltimore at Buffalo. I mean, if the game lives up to the hype, you could only hope. And then obviously Notre Dame playing for the title, we're all going to be there, obviously, except for Sydney and Ben. They won't be there, but the rest of the family will. It's going to be an exciting time.
I was going to say, you have the only game of the weekend in the NFL right now that's spread even approaching anything under a touchdown here. Philadelphia, a 6-point favorite, so technically under a touchdown, but Detroit and the Kansas City Chiefs, both 8.5-point favorites going into this weekend. Buffalo, the 1.5 point home dog in this game to the Baltimore Ravens here. And then, of course, Notre Dame coming up Monday, also 8.5-point dog to Ohio State in the national championship. So on paper, it's a weekend, Dad, that's not supposed to be necessarily the closest round of games, with the exception of yours. So kudos to you. Maybe they'll let Zay Flowers just sit and enjoy the scenes inside a nice warm jacket and plan on him getting warm for the next round, because it all, Dad, and this is what we talk about so much with postseason football stereotypically, but it feels like the last few years especially, it has gone back to, hey, you got to be able to run and stop the run. Like we say it sounds like the basest football analysis humanly possible. But then you actually look at what we've seen in some of these games. I go back to Kansas City last year, where you've got people in the crowd getting frostbite and losing fingers. And on the field out there, a team in the Miami Dolphins who looked wholly unequipped for what they were walking into. And we've seen snow games before undermine some of the game plans of team, but it really does put the premium on line of scrimmage play. And if you are, at least in that game, Buffalo and Baltimore, both very well equipped for that, given who you've got in your respective backfields.
Oh, without question. Both O-lines have some of the fewest O-line combinations. They've basically been the starting five for the year. Both these teams rushed for over 200 yards. Wild card weekend, Bills over Denver and Baltimore over Pittsburgh. So they're built for the running game. Now, when they played in week 4, how much you want to put into it, Baltimore destroyed Buffalo 35-10. They ran for 271 yards. Derrick Henry ran for 199 yards. Buffalo only ran for 60-some yards in that game. But what have you done for me lately? And it's 210 yards against Denver. So you hope James Cook and that rushing attack can be effective. What's interesting, and I know we're going to break this game down, but we talk about Josh Allen and the scrambling and running. Baltimore is the best team in the league at not letting the quarterback pass the line of scrimmage on scrambles. So that's just another thing to look for of the incredible amount of stats and matchups in this game. Mike, I had to stop putting things down. You've had these games as well, right? When you have these matchups, there's so much information and matchups and strategies and things when you're watching film, getting ready for a game, writing information down. I literally had to stop. I literally had to put everything away and say, I have too much. I have too much information on the game. I just need to let the game dictate what I'm going to talk about.
The hay is in the barn, as they say. We will get to our full preview of all the games coming up in the divisional round here in the next couple of segments. So don't worry, Dan will get to unleash some of his fine numbers at you and get you ready to go for all these games here if you're looking to put some money down on it or just enjoy it. But speaking of enjoyment, Dad, we were talking about the college football playoff, and I wanted to ask you this because we went in and talked about this season in particular in the college football playoff so much differently because we were getting an expanded playoff. 12 teams after a decade of the 4-team college football playoff that was already FBS football's first foray into a tournament format here. And I saw Blake Topmeyer over at the USA Today penned the article. It said the college football playoff expansion rescued Ohio State and Notre Dame, and we're better for it. Basically saying and pointing out that, hey, if you had just had the old format in this right now, the 2 teams playing in the national championship would not have made it here. The Texas team that Ohio State beat, the Georgia team that Notre Dame beat, on and on down the list would have been included in this dance, and we wouldn't have a matchup now that I don't know about you, Dad. Does it feel more satisfying now, the 2 teams that we have in the title, given what we've seen them both do on their road here? Notre Dame, as we mentioned, Indiana and Penn State out of the Big Ten as 2 of the best teams south of Ohio State in that conference, with Georgia mixed in there, albeit on their backup quarterback, but in a way where, hey, we went through this controversy last year with Florida State on their backup quarterback where they got left out and we felt like they shouldn't have. Georgia rightly got in, but then also got shown the door because that team clearly not equipped with the backup quarterback to go further than it did. And on the other side, Ohio State undresses in a rematch Oregon, who had been the team that won the Big Ten, Tennessee from the SEC, Texas from the SEC. There is something that feels, Dad, more earned about this title in ways that maybe in the past, because of how abbreviated the postseason format wasn't necessarily the case.
Yeah, you can't say these 2 teams didn't earn their spot, though there will be many that try that's to say that. But you can't. They've gone through 3 games because, again, the teams with the first round bye all lost. So Ohio State and Notre Dame went through 3 games, 3 tests to the committee's 12 teams to go in. And listen, there's always going to be questions about the 12 and how you did the 12. The 2 things I think they absolutely need to change. One is clearly evident, is you can't have the conference champs have the initial bye. You just can't do that. You just have to rank the top 12 and then seed them as how you rank them in the top 12. And I also think that you need the teams that have a bye should get a home game as well. I think the first 2 rounds should be at home. As I've stated, when it was a 4-team playoff, there were 3 bowl games involved. Everybody seemed fine with that. You could still have 3 bowl games involved by having the first and second round at the home team sites and have the semifinals and the finals, just like the old system, have 3 bowl games involved. You rotate it year after year. I think those are the 2 changes that need to be made, but I definitely think this system works one of the reasons it takes out the, oh, this team didn't belong. And as I said, go through the 4-team playoff format, and there have been that's where everybody loves to jump on Notre Dame and say they got blown out. And as I said, go look at all the results. At least one team every year got blown out in the semis. So it happened. But you need to rank the 12 teams because the paths are different, right? You talked about a Penn State path of SMU and Boise State, and you talked about an Oregon path of what they had, of which they lost. So I do think that it has to start with just ranking the top 12 and then seeding according to that.
But I think, Dad, your point about the path even goes to the regular season where, and when I say earned before, it's not like prior champions who have gone through daunting regular seasons had not earned their place in this before. But at the same time, we know, and this has been something spoken on by coaches and pundits alike, is college football does have a problem of being so big and unwieldy, but also so siloed amongst these conferences. And this was what James Franklin was kind of getting at in the press conference with Notre Dame. There's such a lack of uniformity that having a postseason tournament where now we can cross-pollinate a lot more amongst these teams that might not play during the regular season, that might come from disparate conferences here, giving them a chance to actually put this path on wax and not just having to base our opinions off early regular season out of conference matchups here, I do think creates a more satisfying feel. To your point, when you get these last two teams in here, regardless of the results, if our worst fears come true and Ohio State goes out here and blows out Notre Dame the same way we've seen blowouts in other national championship games, to your point, there will not be any saying, hey, they did not belong here, because we have a mountain of evidence in the postseason amongst the teams that you could, woulda, coulda, shoulda with that they had already gone through to bolster their resume.
So I guess my point is the ranking the 12 and not giving a bye to conference champs and playing 2 home games, to me, are easy fixes. What you're talking about, how the hell are you going to fix it? I mean, there's
nothing to fix. I'm not saying there's anything to fix in my regard. I'm saying this is what they did well in creating an environment where this is what I didn't account for, Dad, because in this version of the college football playoff, like, you're right, there are going to be tweaks to fix in terms of the seating and all those things. But if we're just looking at the entertainment value of the expanded playoff, I'm putting my hand up and saying I was wrong. Like, I still thought we were dealing in a world where you were going to have 1 or 2 teams clearly better than everyone else. And again, maybe Ohio State proves that now, but to this point, Dad, Ohio State has the chance to prove this because of the expanded playoff format. This was not the team that we saw for the majority of the regular season and then up and through that Michigan game here. But in a day and age where you've got these super conferences that have popped up, you've got a transfer portal that makes roster flexibility a little bit interesting going into the beginning of every season, building in time for a margin for error in the schedule as teams find themselves in the playoff, in the NIL era and the portal era here, and try and come together. And in the super conference era where some of these schedules are very daunting, Georgia and what they went through in the SEC this year is insane. To have a bit of a margin for error so that great teams who go out there and schedule great schedules, I know we had this conversation with the 3-loss SEC team, but you have in this tournament style created a margin for error that I think is healthy and that still allows great teams in a roster like Ohio State to figure some things out early in the season, play their best ball, and then still have a chance to play for a championship that team still deserves.
Well, yeah, I mean, just by the fact of what you brought up before, that if this was the old system, Notre Dame and Ohio State wouldn't even have been in the top 4. And here they are in the final game. I don't know what the answer is as far as conference strength, where SEC is always going to raise their hand and say, we're playing the toughest schedule in the country. It's still going to come down to 13 humans voting, right? Unless you go back to let the computer decide what the 12 teams are by putting all the information in and letting them spit out 12 teams, it's going to be the human side, the human element, the eye test, or all the different, every week we're trying to figure out what these 13 humans are looking at. And it seems to change week in and week out, which is going to make the debate continuous.
Yeah, the debate is fine for me. I truly, I don't mind that, especially when it comes to teams 11, 12, 13. We'll sort that out to some extent here, but we still saw in those early round games here, and this will change once the seeding is changed properly. But,
Yeah.
underdog upsets that weren't really underdog upsets, they were really only that way in seeding alone. But again, I go back to, because this sport has now structured the way it is overall, I do think in the expanded playoff, building in a margin of error for teams as they go through these schedules. So one loss no longer dooms you, even though I know college football fans loved how violent and chaotic its regular season it was and how much it mattered. I still think the regular season mattered plenty. We still spent how many different cycles of sports media for people trying to fire Ryan Day because they lost to Michigan and now might win a national championship. The regular season still mattered plenty. Alabama losing to Vanderbilt still mattered plenty. That Oregon-Ohio State game in the regular season was still a banger to watch. All that stuff still held, but now you created the wiggle room necessary for teams to go out here in this championship run and then try and get it done.
I mean, you could almost literally say the new playoff system saved Ryan Day's job, right? Because the old system, they would have lost to Michigan, they would have been out. They wouldn't have played for the Big Ten championship, and they would not be in the play. Their season would be over. And the last thing that people would remember from Ryan Day is another loss to Michigan. And even though he's had a phenomenal record outside of losing to Michigan, he may have lost his job, and now he's one game away from winning a national championship. I mean, the ebbs and flows there could be greater than anywhere else.
And that was one of the questions we asked, Dad, in the expanded playoff. You're absolutely right. Would having that on the resume, we thought, be the thing that saved you, but also the opportunity it gives you to make a run through the postseason? Would that also give coaches the resume boost that they need in a day and age where having, hey, college football playoff head coach or college, someone who's won blank game in the postseason be the resume boost necessary to get your fan base off your back? And at least in this case, again, who knows how realistic the chances of Ryan Day being fired were, but in the picture you painted, in that reality and that alternate strand of the timeline, there is a world where I could see that absolutely being on the table much more than it turned out to be now. And so now we get this opportunity here. And in a day and age, Dad, where I think, not for nothing, there has not been one dominant team this season. And so it is allowed for us to wonder more. And in that time period, a team like Notre Dame, who before seemed boxed out of the upper crust of the sport, and now maybe it's because of all the changes, maybe it's because of the retirement of Nick Saban and others, maybe this is just the sands of time and dynasties are built to one day crumble. Now it feels like the curve is flattened a lot more. More teams have this opportunity. And so I didn't think a 12-team playoff, Dad, was going to actually help us pick a better champion. And at least in year one, I appear ready to put my hand up and say I was wrong about that.
I think, going back to what you first said, that the one thing you have to say is both these teams belong, something that you could have much more of a debate about in a 4-team playoff because you saw the blowouts. But these two teams had to go through 3 games because they didn't get a bye, and they're meeting in the title game. So no matter the outcome, they deserve to be there.
Yeah, earned, not given, on a road that absolutely has helped us in this season pick a better champion than we would have in the old system. And for that, we are all grateful as we get ready to board flights to Atlanta. Coming up next, we'll get to all the games coming up here, including the Sunday nighter that my dad's going to be on the call for in Buffalo. But before we get to that, we have to start, Dad, with the Texans and the 1-seed Kansas City Chiefs. We get the 1 seeds back. Kansas City well-earned, well-rested, and an 8.5-point favorite going into this matchup with the Houston Texans. It's a rematch of a game played near the end of the season. One of the games where Joe Thuney, Dad, had made the switch out to left tackle because of the injuries at those positions and had held up decently well. Now, these edge rushers for the Houston Texans are going to get over on anyone here, but a long shot in this game, Dad. If Houston's going to pull the upset, what do you think that has to look like?
I mean, they have to control the ball on offense with Mixon, who is nicked up as well. Again, just about everybody's nicked up, but as far as playing or not playing and playing effectively, Mixon is nicked up. Nico Collins has had a phenomenal year, being left alone with Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs both out. Missed 5 games and still had over 1,000 yards receiving. So they're going to need to control the ball on offense and keep the ball away from Pat Mahomes. Sound familiar? Even though this offense for Kansas City hasn't been as dynamic as it has in some of their Super Bowl years, they're still winning at an unbelievable clip. And as far as the offense, we talked about it for the offense for Kansas City. What do? DJ Humphries is a left tackle. Do you put him at left tackle? He's only played in 2 games since he was picked up by Kansas City. Does Mike Caliendo stay at left guard and Joe Thuney go out to left tackle with these edge rushers? That's going to be interesting to see. And if it is Thuney out there or Humphries and they struggle, how much do they have to help with the edge rushers? So listen, Kansas City's the better team. Houston is playing better. Houston really, really showed how the postseason is so different than the regular season. Because the regular season, they were mediocre in a mediocre division. And they just turned it on in the postseason, right? Everybody thought the Chargers were going to go in. The Chargers were favored to go in and beat them. And they played well, especially defensively. Well, they're going to need that defense to step up as well. I don't know. I'm certainly picking Kansas City in this game. I think time will run out on Houston.
I think Houston's defense played well in the wild card round. I think the rest of that game looked gross. Like offensively, neither of those teams looked like they really wanted to win the game all that much and kept giving the other team opportunities to. So I'd push back on that slightly. And the thing that worries me most, Dad, because you're right, the war machine on the other side, Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter, the only tandem in the NFL in pairs of edge rushers in the top 10 in quarterback pressure percentage in the NFL this season. They have been sensational. Danielle Hunter, as advertised, the offseason move to send Jonathan Greenard and basically switch him with Danielle Hunter in Minnesota and call it a day, has paid off famously for them on defense. And they were a nightmare in the wild card round against that Los Angeles Chargers offensive line that, across the board, especially the tackle tandem there, a much stronger pair of tackles than the ones you're going to be dealing with for the Kansas City Chiefs. But the reason, Dad, and I think Andrew Whitworth, when he was on this yesterday, highlighted this, the reason it is probably the right move to move Joe Thuney back to the interior and then put DJ Humphries at left tackle, provided he is healthy enough to do that, is because you don't want to make 2 areas worse to try and make one area a little bit better. The interior of your offensive line has been your strength. And you know who knows that? Pat Mahomes. Now, he looked, I would argue, more comfortable down the home stretch of the season when you had Thuney out there. That also could have something to do with the fact that Hollywood Brown was back and seemed to give them that added element to their offense. And so I do think that would go a long way, Dad, in at least steadying the one part of your offensive line that was your identity on the interior, and let them go out here and try and wear out this Houston Texans defensive front and make them incredibly physically uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough task for Houston, because I agree about the offense. Even though they put up 32 against the Chargers, I agree. The offense was not overwhelming. Nico Collins, far and away the leading receiver with 7 receptions in that game, and they're definitely leaning on him. I just think it's too tall of a task to beat Kansas City, who's been in this position. This is now the Texans' 6th shot at trying to make the AFC title game, and they're 0-5. They have not made the AFC title game, and I believe they're going to be 0-6. I just like Kansas City in this. What is it, 8.5? The spread. I would probably give the points as well, in all honesty.
Yeah, that was, and Kansas City covered that earlier in the season. I think they won by 9 in their first matchup with Houston at the end of the season there. So that might be a little rich for my blood, but I just also don't. If you asked me to do it, I would probably lean and say I would take Kansas City and the points, given the fact that I think Houston is not as good a team as we saw last year. I think they won a playoff game in the same way they did, but it certainly didn't look the same. Biggest issue for me, offensive line. Houston's allowed the 3rd highest quick pressure rate in the NFL, percentage of pressures that happen in under 2.5 seconds. And Chris Jones on the other side, likely going to be back for this game. One of 2 players in the NFL with 20 or more pressures in the interior defensive line and the exterior. We talk about how they want to move him around all over the place. So he's going to match up punt in this game, even if he's not 100%. I just think this Houston offensive line hasn't been able to protect CJ Stroud all year long. And against Spags and this Chiefs defense, I don't think that's going to get any better in this matchup here. So I think they're going to Kansas City going to move on in this one. Patrick Mahomes and company will continue their quest for a third straight NFL title. And, Dad, that gets us to the AFC game that will finish off the weekend here, the game that you're on the call for. Baltimore at the Buffalo Bills here. The Buffalo Bills, a 1.5-point home dog in this game here. You've been getting ready to call it. You got a boatload of information here. So give me your keys to the game going into this matchup.
Well, I mean, keys to the game are going to be Buffalo stopping the run, right? I mean, Baltimore, you go back to week 4, they ran for 271 yards. Derrick Henry ran for 199, including an 87-yard touchdown run, I believe, in the first snap of the game. They ran all over them. Now, Buffalo was missing 2 linebackers and a DB, including Matt Milano at linebacker, so they were a little shorthanded in that game, but they absolutely got run on. And Buffalo is going to try and run without a doubt with James Cook after they gained 210 yards last week. It's going to come down to the quarterbacks. I mean, the quarterbacks are the top 2 quarterbacks in regular season win percentage in the Super Bowl era. With no Super Bowl starts. First playoff winning matchup all time between quarterbacks with over 40 touchdowns and under 10 turnovers. I mean, Lamar Jackson, first in NFL history with 40-plus touchdown passes and fewer than 5 interceptions. Josh Allen, first quarterback NFL history with 25 touchdown passes, 10 rushing touchdowns, and under 10 interceptions. I mean, the stats that you could just – they're the leading – playoff rushers in history. Josh Allen's played 11 games. He has 609 yards. Lamar Jackson has played in 4 fewer games. He's played in 7 games and has 602 yards. He's only 7 yards away from Josh Allen. But they're the leading 2 rushers in playoff history of rushing quarterbacks. I mean, there are just so many stats to read off in this game, but I do think it is going to come down to the running games for both teams.
Well, and Dan, I think your point about the quarterback running game is well served because we hear all the time for both of these teams and both of these quarterbacks during the regular season. Do you want Josh Allen is involved in the run game early on, taking all these hits on his body, Lamar Jackson, his weight fluctuating, all these different questions that we ask about him. In the postseason, they popped the governor off these guys. We know, and we saw that in the wild card round for the Baltimore Ravens, where Lamar Jackson had more designed rushing attempts than any game he had in this season, more rushing attempts or as many rushing attempts as he had since week 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs in a game that felt like a playoff game right out of the gate. And for Baltimore, Dad, it's going to be interesting with that because they've got to create another dimension to this offense if Zay Flowers either can't go or isn't 100% in this game. Because you looked at the last time around these two teams played, the thing that stuck out to me outside of the gaudy rushing totals was the space that Zay Flowers helps create in this offense. Lamar Jackson did not attempt a tight window throw where a defender was within a yard of the offensive player out in the route. And that, to me, starts with Zay Flowers. He's got the highest percentage of this team's routes downfield, catches over 10 yards. And so if he's not able to go out there and space the field, and Baltimore's got to do what they did last round and batten down the hatches and get Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely and Pat Ricard on the field and try and beat him up, Lamar Jackson's legs then become the added dimension that creates space for this offense and allows that group, because Buffalo's got the better offensive line. Baltimore's offensive line has come a long way this season. They've got good personnel here. Roger Rosengarten has come a long way from being a rookie going out there and looking like struggling against Chris Jones in limited matchups in that week 1 outing. But that's still a group that is not as good as their Buffalo counterpart. And so having Lamar Jackson and what he affords you in the backfield, along with Derrick Henry, I do think is going to have to be the difference if Zay can't go.
It's good. And what's going to be interesting for Buffalo in trying to stop the run is Buffalo plays with 5 DBs 95% of the time, well, the top in the league. And you're playing with 5 DBs against when the Baltimore Ravens will use 6 offensive linemen and, oh, by the way, Patrick Ricard, first-team All-Pro fullback, who is over 300 pounds. So you literally will have 7 300-pounders and a 250-pound running back in Derrick Henry and an unbelievable runner in Lamar Jackson as 9 players on the field. And if the Buffalo stays with 5 DBs like they do 95% of the time, man, they have got to gang tackle. They have got to gang. They're not going to one-on-one tackle Derrick Henry. They've got to be able to gang tackle. And again, do you go away from what got you there? We talked about that with Notre Dame and the man coverage, top man coverage team in the country. Do you do that against Jeremiah Smith, or do you change? And you kind of go with what got you there. And this is what got Buffalo there. You play with 5 Ds. You play with a nickelback like a linebacker, but you better be able to stop this powerful running game.
Yeah, Dad, to your point there, even like more specific, when the Buffalo Bills face 2-back sets. So if you've got Pat Ricard out there with Derrick Henry, they've matched with 5 defensive backs on 85% of their snaps. That's more than double the rest of the NFL in that regard, and the NFL average there. Taron Johnson is usually the one that comes down there in the box, but other teams haven't really tested them in that case here. Opposing teams only ran the ball into those looks 19.7% of the time. The Baltimore Ravens run into loaded box looks 40.9% of their snaps when they are matched with them. That is almost double the NFL average in that regard. And Derrick Henry leads the NFL in carries, yards, touchdowns, missed tackles, and rush yards over expected on design runs into loaded boxes. So in my mind, Dad, Baltimore is the kryptonite for the way that Buffalo wants to run their defense. I think this is just a bad matchup here. We're going to go ahead. I know you cannot pick this game because you are on the call for this game, but we are going to make this our cash it or trash it game of the weekend here in the divisional round, as it is the best game here. Cash it or trash it, presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. And Dad, I'm going to take the Ravens in this game. And I'm going to give the 1.5 points here. I do think it's close. This could be a field goal game here because we've seen how Josh Allen and the Bills offensive line ran all up on that Denver Broncos defensive front that is right behind the Baltimore Ravens in terms of one of the best rush defenses in the NFL. But I think on the other side, Baltimore, too varied on offense with the added element that Lamar gives you. I do think that tight end room can attack the safeties for Buffalo, and I think that Derrick Henry against what we just described from Buffalo's defense is going to be too much for the Buffalo Bills in this game.
I think both running attacks will open up both play action teams. You have Khalil Shakir, who's forced the most missed tackles amongst wide receivers. Has 171 yards after shaking missed tackles. So if they can get a running game going and get him open on slant or short passes in play action pass, that's certainly going to help the Buffalo offense as well. And we have to see on Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers did not practice all week. John Harbaugh said he doesn't have to practice to play. He can sit all week and still play, but you wonder how effective he's going to be. I'll leave you with this stat. I love stats where the last time it happened was years ago. The Baltimore Ravens led offensively in rushing yards per game and yards per carry on the offensive side. They also led the league in defensive rushing yards per game and yards per carry. So they led in yards per carry and yards per rush and on offense and on defense. It's the 4th time in NFL history. The other 3 times, 1944 Philadelphia, 1942 Chicago, and 1939 Chicago. So, I mean, that's a pretty impressive stat for Baltimore.
So it's the first time they've done this since we moved on from black and white pictures, photographing or videotaping these games to get it done, is what you're telling me there. A first from this Baltimore team, trying to make it happen this weekend. Should be an exciting round of games in the AFC. Coming up next, we will look at the NFC and figure out the Detroit matchups for this weekend here. We started with the 1 seed on the other side, so we'll do that here as well. Detroit coming off the bench here. Dad, the Lions, the NFC's 1 seed for the first time in their franchise history, and the conference's only team that's in the divisional round for the 2nd straight year, after having not won a playoff game in 2 straight years since the 50s. So this is uncharted territory for this franchise in a while, but feels right at home for Detroit, who's an 8.5-point favorite over the Washington Commanders, who, listen, Jaden Daniels and company showed you the offensive firepower yet again in the wild card round. Dad, can they take advantage of this beat up Lions defense and make this thing a game?
I mean, it's going to have to be a high scoring. They're going to have to win a high scoring affair if they're going to win this game. I don't see it being low scoring, certainly on Detroit's side. But Detroit's defensive side, you look at their last 5 games, they gave up 31 to the Packers, 48 to the Bills, and 34 to the 49ers. So the defense has given up some points. Now, their last game against the Vikings, they held them to 9. They pressured. They had a couple of sacks on Sam Darnold. They hit him 10 times. They pressured him. So that was a hell of a defensive game Aaron Glenn, as troops had. But they have given up some points, and Washington needs to take advantage of that. Terrion Arnold, the Lions rookie cornerback, looks like he's ready to go after leaving that game against Minnesota with a foot injury. On offense, Kevin Zeitler, the hamstring, has not practiced all week, but doesn't need to. I mean, at this point, he doesn't need to practice. He needs to be healthy for the game because this is one of the best offensive lines in the game that's going to try and run, getting David Montgomery back. But even if Montgomery is limited, which he probably will be, Jahmyr Gibbs, we talked about this yesterday, has been an incredible workhorse. They have incredible weapons on offense. They're going to score points. It's going to be if Washington, led by Jaden Daniels, who has been fantastic this year, can keep up.
Yeah, Dad, you talked about it, Detroit's defense, and we know and have heard the stats since week 7 when Aiden Hutchinson went down, has blitzed at a 42.5% rate in the NFL, second highest in the league since that point in time. Jaden Daniels has been arguably one of the best rookie quarterbacks against the blitz in NFL history. By the numbers, at least since 2016, he's got the best passer rating of any quarterback against the blitz to go along with everything else. He has been sensational in beating extra defenders coming at him. So that's a great on great matchup. To your point, though, Dad, this team in the Detroit Lions authored the game plan, I think, that the Los Angeles Rams used to go and pull the upset in the first round of the playoffs against the Minnesota Vikings, showing them the blueprint for how to get there. And Aaron Glenn's got a really good sense for his team and what they're able to go get done. So that's going to be a big factor, as is Jaden Daniels' legs. It's really that. It is Jaden against the blitz. Jaden Daniels is a scrambler, where you've seen this Detroit Lions team get hurt on early downs. And then fourth down aggressiveness. This might be the most aggressive fourth down game in NFL history, Dad, when you look at what both these teams have done. The Washington Commanders, 20 of 23 on the season going forward on fourth down, while the Lions are 22 of 23. The Commanders have scored 115 points on drives that have involved a fourth down conversion. That's the most in a season since at least 2016. And the Lions, not to be outdone, 92 points in the same situation. That's the third most in that span. So we know Dan Campbell wants to go out there and risk it, but Dan Quinn has showed you. And how about that for a former defensive coach who is now back in the head coaching chair, kind of bucking that trend, Dad, in his second time around and bite at the apple at head coach. We're going to see these two teams go after it. That's why, to your point, this is the highest point total of the weekend. 55.5 on DraftKings Sportsbook is 4 points higher than the next closest game at least. So everyone expecting fireworks in this game. The thing that worries me for the Washington Commanders, Dad, is they are bad at defending runs from under center, and the Detroit Lions are the best team in the NFL at running under center. And to me, Dad, it seems that simple. Like, it goes back to all the fancy analysis that we want to do this time of year, even for a game that's going to be played indoors, the game that's going to be played inside at Ford Field in Detroit. It still comes down to, at a base, can you run or stop the run? Because if you can't against this Detroit Lions team or this team like the Philadelphia Eagles we're going to talk about, I feel like you're going to have a bad time. And for that reason, I just can't pick the Commanders in this game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we talk about Buffalo bringing in the extra offensive lineman. Detroit does it with Dan Skipper. They have Brock Wright as that blocking tight end who's good for a catch or two a game, but a blocking tight end as well. So they're just going to load up that line and try and run on Washington. So I just think Detroit's going to have too much. And they're going to force Washington into a game they maybe don't want to play by not being able to mix in the run and the pass and force them to throw. I just think Detroit has too much firepower. They're playing in their home turf. It's a fast track in the dome. I like Detroit in this, and I'm actually going to give the points.
I don't know if I'm comfortable with the 8.5. I think I'll take Washington plus 8.5, but I think Detroit wins this game. I think it's exciting, but again, just what this team has been able to do on the ground this season here. Even if David Montgomery is not back, Jahmyr Gibbs has been sensational here. They've got 56 explosive runs in the under-center running game. That's 22 more than second place. They've had an explosive on 15.4% of their under-center runs. No other team has over 13%. So it has been a team that has found a way to go pry guys out. Kevin Zeitler's health, something to keep an eye on. He was held out of practice both days this week dealing with that hamstring. But as long as he's good to go and that unit is whole, I see no reason why Detroit shouldn't keep things moving on and shouldn't keep things going in the right direction here. Dad, let's finish up. Philadelphia Eagles, Los Angeles Rams. The Eagles a 6-point favorite. Coming off a game where, I don't know about you, Dad, Philadelphia against Green Bay, I came away less than impressed overall. Maybe it was just Philadelphia saying, we know we just have to survive in advance. We're not going to put the ball in harm's way against a Green Bay team that by the end just had nothing and no one left. All three of their top receivers out of that game, top offensive linemen, one of their best defensive linemen, linebacker Quay Walker was in and out of the lineup. So just too much to happen there. So, Dad, the Los Angeles Rams, the upset story of the first round, can they pull it here against the Eagles?
Well, I mean, this offense, we've talked about this offense. It's like feast or famine. They score in the 40s or they score in the teens, which befuddles me with the weapons that they have. So which offense is going to show up according to obviously how Philly plays a defense? These two teams played a few weeks back. They played in November, end of November, and Philly won 37-20. They ran for 314 yards. Saquon Barkley ran for 255 himself. So they can control the ball running. It was a game, though, that with like 11 minutes to go in the third quarter was a one-score game. It was 20-14. Yep. But then Philly, the rest of the game, outscored them 17-6 and pulled away in that game. But it was definitely close in the third quarter. To me, Mike, it's which offense shows up for the Rams, the one that can score points, because defensively we saw what they did to Minnesota and sacking Sam Darnold. Now, this Philadelphia offensive line is top 3 in the league, if not the best in the league at run blocking, but they have given up 45 sacks in the regular season. The rush has gotten to Jalen Hurts. So that could be a feather in the cap for this young front seven for the Rams. They're going to need to put pressure on Jalen Hurts. Weather, is it possibly snow? It's going to be cold. The game they played weeks ago was in L.A., in obviously a lot better weather. So I think the running game will be even more important, which gives certainly the edge to Philadelphia.
Yeah. That's the thing. And again, it's the unfun analysis of all this because it reduces it down, but at least we're not reducing it to quarterbacks. We've done that much for you around here, but that number just rings in my head, Dad. Franchise record 255 rushing yards from Saquon Barkley in that last performance. At pretty much everything we talk about with this Rams defense is what they do against the passer. And listen, I think the back end in Ahkello Witherspoon and those guys have come a long way. You had to hockey line change so much of that secondary earlier in the year when you brought over guys like Trey White and some older players that weren't working out. And you went in favor of a young group that forced a bunch of turnovers when they first got on the field. And then this last week authored a really great performance blitzing a team where we knew the Minnesota Vikings wanted to get to the pass. They wanted the deep play action stuff. That was how they were going to live. We saw plenty of successful runs mixed in. Dad, they just got behind the 8 ball so quick. Matthew Stafford got out to such a hot start, and the Rams were able to force them into a bad game script and the perfect one for their defense. I don't know if I can count on that same thing against Philadelphia where, listen, I still have questions about if this team can go out here and go score for score with a team like the Detroit Lions that's as consistently dynamic on offense. But I think the Philadelphia Eagles could still hand the ball off to Saquon and say, go get us some yards against this defense, and just not give Jared Verse or Braden Fisk or the rest of this group as many opportunities to rush the passer and go affect the game the way they did last week.
I'm somewhat befuddled too. Puka Nacua is going to get his. Tyler Higbee had 5 catches in the playoff game, but he hurt his chest, ended up spending time in the hospital, missed some practice this week. But Cooper Kupp was targeted once, had 1 catch for 29 yards in the win over the Vikings, has had just 5 catches in the last 4 games. I'm amazed how much he's disappeared in this offense. Now they're in the divisional round, so they're winning when they need to win. But as I mentioned, their point totals in some of the games aren't very high, and he just has not been a big part of the offense.
No, that part's certainly been surprising here. Big part of the offense has certainly been in the backfield, though, when you're talking about Kyron Williams and the job that he's done this year. I think I saw the highest percentage of his team's touches in the NFL this season, been sensational for them. That offensive line, finally healthy again too, which they're going to need, right? This Jalen Carter-led Eagles defensive front showed you in the last game that while now in the regular season they spread out minutes more amongst the guys there, you're seeing more of the same guys in the postseason. Nolan Smith coming off one of his best games as an Eagle in that last round and the job that he did harassing Jordan Love in that game. I think that group, Dad, ultimately the difference. The matchup you brought up earlier in the season, Jalen Carter only generated one pressure in that game. He got double teamed a ton, and even when he was soloed up, didn't necessarily have the biggest impact. But I still think that group, the biggest factor, honestly, for me, Dad, is going to be at linebacker in this game. Nakobe Dean out for the Philadelphia Eagles. And we know with the Los Angeles Rams, they motion at the second highest rate in the NFL. They're incredibly effective in that way. Sean McVay is a great guy who can try and attack your eyes in the middle of a defense. And Oren Burks looked like he was really struggling with a guy in Matt LaFleur that's cut from the same cloth, going and attacking him a lot in coverage. And so what Vic Fangio can do to try and cover up and help him out in this game is going to go a long way. But I think the Eagles can come out and dictate the terms first. I'd pick the Eagles. I would give the points in this game. I think they can win by the touchdown. This Rams team just has not, Dad, the point you made originally, been consistent enough with the kind of offensive output we saw last weekend for me to say they can muster that up again here and win this game.
Yeah, I just don't know if they can. And Philly, listen, they put up. Now, again, I always take out Week 18, but put up 41 against the Cowboys, 33 against Washington, though even in a loss, 27 against Pittsburgh. So we know they can score some points, and they kind of build it up on you between the running game and the passing game. I do like them in this game. I think that the Ram offense has just been a little too inconsistent for me. So I'll take the Eagles, and I'll give the points. I think I've given the points in the three games that I've picked. Obviously not picking Baltimore and Buffalo, but I think I've given the points in all three games.
Well, yeah, and I mean, all three games, again, we mentioned 2 over a touchdown in terms of the spread, and this game, 6 points, so right under that mark. It on paper looks like that kind of weekend. We know it rarely turns out like that, and the Rams, I'm sure, are the team that everyone thinks could push them because they've certainly got the edge of the quarterback matchup in this one. Jalen Hurts is a guy who had questions asked about him in the middle of the season that kind of went away the next week because he threw the ball a ton to his receivers in the next game. I think both had over 100 yards, but if pressed into a shootout, there's still questions in a lot of people's minds about if 2024-25 Jalen can go and answer the bell.
So best chance, we basically have picked, you picked 4 games, I picked 3. We basically picked the favorites. And taking away Baltimore and Buffalo, because it's only a point, the other ones you mentioned are at least 6 or more. Which team do you think has the best chance to actually pull the upset off? The Texans, the Commanders, or the Rams?
I think it's the Rams. I think they're the most high variance team where, hey, because you've got guys that can make splash plays on defense, because you've got a quarterback that if he gets hot with those receivers can be the best left in the postseason or close to it on his best day. Or one of the best, I should say. Matthew Stafford would not be the best. He'd be behind the 3 quarterbacks in the AFC. I digress. He'd be the best quarterback in the NFC on his best day if he gets hot. And I think for that reason, Dad, I would say, hey, maybe if they can go out there and jump on him early and force the Eagles to be more pass first than run first, they could pull it off.
I agree. They're the team out of the Texans, the Commanders, and the Rams that could actually score the most if they start to hit some of their plays. They have that ability.
No doubt about it. So big rematch last night in the association. We talked about the last time the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Cleveland Cavaliers squared off, 2 of the best teams in the NBA's best records. Went at it. Well, they ran it back in Oklahoma City last night, and the results were not cute. It was a buzzsaw victory for the Thunder that won 134-114, and I promise it wasn't that close, led by as many as 42. And how about MVP frontrunner Shai Gilgeous-Alexander outscored the Cavs on his own in the first quarter, had 40 points overall in just 20 minutes. The first player and become a very important person in our lives here. Notre Dame quarterback Riley Leonard, kind enough to join us here now on behalf of Great Clips, but in the lead up to Monday's college football playoff national championship matchup against Ohio State. So Riley, good morning, man. How you feeling?
I'm feeling really good, man. The body's finally, it usually takes me about 4 or 5 days after a game to finally start feeling good, but feeling good. The whole team's starting to feel a little better.
I was going to say, this is the first year of the 12-team playoff, and both you and Ohio State have played 15 games. So just from it's almost getting to be like an NFL schedule, just from that fact of how you've dealt with each game in the playoffs of practice and rest. How has that gone compared to the regular season?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have a really good sports science department, so everything we do, we're taking our load into equation and adjusting practice off that. I think we took a more aggressive approach early, going into Indiana because we had 3 weeks. So we took 1 week off, went one week really hard, and then the week leading up to the game, took it a little lighter. But every week is different, and I think we do a good job of really going hard, but then later in the week giving our bodies some rest. So it's a tough balance, and yeah, obviously I take a lot of hits, so I'm feeling it, pretty much everywhere at this point. And I don't plan on having too much time after the season either, with the Senior Bowl. So I guess we're just gonna live with it. It is what it is.
Yep.
That run up for guys coming off the long college football season into the pre-draft process, the Senior Bowl, like you mentioned, it's no doubt going to be a test, but certainly a one that would feel a lot better with some hardware that you guys have the chance for on Monday. And you mentioned the hits coming for you, obviously an incredibly physical player, but for this team, Riley, take me inside the mindset that you guys have carried that's allowed you to overcome the litany of injuries. Everyone knows, Benjamin Morrison early on in the season, Riley Mills in the playoff run here. Now the offensive line taking some injury. You're starting left tackle Anthony Knapp out for this game here, and that group getting reshuffled. So how have you guys approached that behind the scenes in a way that's allowed you to have the success you've still had through this run?
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to change a person completely. You guys know what it's like to live in South Bend, especially in the wintertime. Here you got to be gritty. You got to be a blue collar dude who's not afraid to go through some stuff now. Like it's this weather and this place isn't for the weak minded. Even going to school, like you got to be mentally tough now, and you got to be a mature, professional kid about everything that you do. So I think we're lucky, given the character in our locker room, and it's really kind of unsaid. It's just what we are. It's who we are. It's what we do. We work hard. We don't complain. We put our head down and we hit. So that's just kind of Notre Dame football. And coach will preach about it sometimes, but that's one of those things we already know. That's just what we're gonna do.
So the only blemish on the record is week 2 against Northern Illinois, and Coach Freeman talked about how he brings that up. How much was that game brought up week in and week out throughout the season?
Every single week. And he wouldn't do it too often, but definitely before the game he would do it, because me and other guys, it really fired us up. It pissed us off a little bit before we ran out that tunnel. And it also reminded us, like, we're not trying to be the best team in the country. We're trying to be the best team on the field, because right now we know that anybody can beat anybody. I remember playing the undefeated Army and Navy, and I was scared to death internally, because I was convinced this is the best team in the country we were about to play. And if we can lose to NIU, we can lose to anybody. And they were a good team that day. But I think having a little bit of fear in you will lead to a sense of urgency when you're on the field.
Well, you guys have had that sense of urgency, and you've been able to do it in a lot of ways. A lot got made of this team in the ground attack. You as a part of that. Jeremiah and what he's done this season. Jadarian Price. All these great guys in the offensive line there. And then against Penn State, all of a sudden you guys hit the halftime locker room and come back, and it looked like the air raid Irish here. Jaden Greathouse has one of his best games of the season. How have you and the receivers gone about keeping that part of your guys' game ready, even as it always hasn't been front and center in your guys' offensive game plan?
Yeah, I think we know when the time comes where we need to execute, we will. But even though we did have success in the second half in the passing game, it really did start with the run game and winning the line of scrimmage. We came out and we had some 10, 15 yard run plays that first drive, and that's what opens up the pass game. Whenever they start bringing everybody into the box and we're able to take our shots in the passing game when we need to. Are we going to go out there the first drive of the game and call 15 passes? Probably not. But when we need to, we have all the confidence in the world that we can go out there and execute. These guys are smart, they're mature, and they don't say a word, right? The run game kind of is not priority, but something that, we've done really a good job at. And we call a lot of run plays, but they don't say a word. They just put their head down, go to work. When their number's called, they're always ready.
Yeah, and talk about your mentality, because when you normally think of a quarterback running, it's trying to avoid hits, unless you're obviously going for a first down or a touchdown. We saw you get flipped going for the first down. But you seem to attract contact no matter when you run. Is there ever a thought of avoiding a hit if it's not for a first down or a touchdown?
All right, yeah, this is a good subject, because I do take a lot of hits, but I genuinely think I find the soft shoulder the majority of the time, or I'm finding the little crease. And a lot of people don't see that, but like if I put my right shoulder down against Georgia into a DB who's trying to stick me first down, I feel like I got a better chance of, injuring my right shoulder than if I just melee it over the top of them. And maybe I'm tripping, but I do think that, like, yes, I take a lot of hits, but they're not as bad as they probably look. I'm a little flimsy of a person, but they're not as bad as you think. I do think I try to find the soft shoulder, and I don't slide. Why do I not slide? Well, first of all, you lose like 5 yards. Second of all, first game I slid and got my head taken off. So that's another reason I don't like to slide feet first. So yeah, it's funny topic. But if you go back and watch the runs, I'm not really taking like just head on, really. I don't feel like, at least, just boom, stick. So yeah.
No, I think a quarterback we saw work in your offensive coordinator's offense last year in Jaden Daniels took a lot more of those melee style hits than we've seen you take during a lot of this season. So no, I'm with you. I think, and your involvement in the run game has been huge for this team, as has your backfield mate, Jeremiah Love. That touchdown run against Penn State, I don't know, you were on the field for that. You saw it firsthand, and you've seen what he's put into this, being not 100% right now. What can you say about Jeremiah Love and what his effort has meant to this team throughout the postseason run?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. A lot of people don't see him as that running back who's going to run people over and run through guys and get those dirty yards. But that's an underrated part of his game now. He probably gained 20 pounds this offseason of straight muscle. I mean, look at him last year to this year. He is a completely different back, and he's still able to do the, freakish things that he does. But getting those extra gritty yards is something that I've seen, because I got a good view of it. I'm seeing him getting touched at the line of scrimmage and just getting 5 yards, which isn't going to be a highlight play, but I mean, his yards after contact and in the box is really impressive all year.
I have never seen a guy jump higher hurdling someone. He doesn't even touch the defender. It blows my mind. So, all right. Well, so you have one more game, not only this season, but in your college career against Ohio State. Tell us some of the problems that the Ohio State defense shows you guys.
Yeah, I think up front they do a really good job of getting to the quarterback, and as a whole, right, their defense is very well coached. They know who they are, they know what they do, and they do it really well. They seem to all be on the same page, and they're a veteran team who's with the first year DC, but they get it, and they do a good job with the defense. Great communication. Their back end are, if you think of a stereotypical, what you want a corner, safeties, and a nickel to look like, they got it. When you're playing the national championship, of course, you're gonna get the best of the best. But they do a good job of getting to the quarterback, setting picks for their guys to land, and it's got to be good with protection. They're gonna try to, show one thing, bring another. So I got to be good there, and but as long as we play our game, take what they give us, we should be fine.
What has the message been from Marcus Freeman as you guys now get closer and closer to game time, making that trip out to Atlanta and getting ready for the final leg of what's been a season-long journey?
Yeah, not much is different in the message and the preparation. Obviously we're in class this week, but we're taking advantage of the 10 days instead of 7 that we normally get. The message has been in the preparation and elevation, honestly. He talks about elevation a lot, and it's just getting better. Like, we're not in this thing to keep our head above water or, be the same team we were last week and stay healthy. We're here, like, we're using this time to get better. I don't think our our goal was necessarily ever to, obviously the goal is to win the national championship, but our goal was really to reach our full potential. And our full potential is a national championship. But we're just trying to, reach our full potential. Who can we be as an offense? I don't think we're there yet. I don't think the defense would say that they're there yet. So we're just striving to be the best version of ourselves.
We talk about like the 2 weeks before a Super Bowl, how it gets crazy in the preparation. When Mike and my other son Jake played for the title in 2013, they had 44 days to prepare for the national championship game against Alabama. So as you went along this, and being the quarterback at Notre Dame is already high profile enough, but how much has the preparation and the surrounding craziness, like interviews with us, how much has that like increased each week?
It does increase a little bit, but we have a great media team here who, always have my back and make my life really easy. So I don't really have to deal with anything. They'll just shoot me a text. Hey, pull up after practice for 10, 15 minutes and knock this out. I'm not taking classes right now, so that helps a lot. A lot of the guys are, but I'm not. So I'm really just in the goog all day. I mean, can't really go outside here. So just kind of just watch. It's really not too bad.
Yeah, no, like I say, you're getting a jump start on your professional football career and learning what it's like to get to go and navigate this without class right now. And I know you do have a great team there too. Do you still have your pet support in the room right now? Or are you being supported by your canine companion in the room here?
I am. Archie, come here. This is Archie. I don't know if you can see him, but great dog right here.
No.
Here you go.
Archie.
It's Archie right there.
Oh, there you
Archie.
go. Archie.
Oh, there we go. See, with that kind of support here.
He's more famous
That's
than me.
awesome.
He is one of the most
That's
prized recruits in Notre Dame history.
Absolutely.
So, all right, so you've got that as your backdrop here. And Riley, I know you also are going to be looking the part come Monday here. You're here on behalf of Great Clips. What can you tell us about how they're helping get you ready for the national championship Monday?
Yeah, I've actually been growing Great Clips like my whole life. When I was in Durham, I used to hop between like 3 different ones. That was in the area at Duke. And then when I got here, I was going to Great Clips for a while. So, when they reached out for a partnership, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And they've been great to me. They're offering $9.99 haircuts, and I'm a cheap guy. Anytime I can get a sale or a bargain, dude, I'm all in. So they've done a great job, and I appreciate them a lot.
You're a man after our own heart, no doubt, looking for the bargain out here, Riley. But you have been anything but a bargain for the Irish this season. You have been worth the full price of admission here for the job that you've done leading this football team, man. We're excited to see you in Atlanta on Monday. Rest up. Best of luck. We're rooting for you in this game. You guys know we're huge Irish fans here. We're excited for the great game and an opportunity for Ohio State as well. But, we'll be bleeding blue and gold on Monday and looking forward to it with you. So safe travels and good luck, man.
Thank you, guys. Always fun time talking to you. Jesus bless.
Great catching up with Riley, who has got plenty on his plate heading into Monday, facing that Ohio State defense and all of the future prospects in that group. Going to be a fun game, and God, I just hope he's got a few more of those hurdles left in him. Him and Jeremiah Love are going to need to bust it all out because last game of the season, there's no holding anything back now. So we've got that still to look forward to coming up on Monday. We will have the full breakdown and preview for it coming up then. So don't worry, it's coming. We're going to be leaning into it. I'm going to be vomiting into a garbage can. It's all going to be great. Coming up next, though, potential competition for the NBA, and we pay our respects to a legend to join us. Talk about what he's got going on, this Baltimore Ravens defense led by a safety and Kyle Hamilton that seems cut from very similar cloth around those parts. And we'll get his vantage point on some of the great quarterbacks that we're getting ready to see in this round as well here. Dad, speaking of defenders, though, Rams rookie Jared Verse certainly not shying away from the opportunity and the matchup coming up here this weekend. Apparently in a Los Angeles Times article, he was quoted as saying, "I hate Eagles fans. They're so annoying. I hate Eagles fans. When I see that green and white, I hate it. I actually get upset. Like I actually get genuinely hot." So this man, who is coming off one of the better seasons from a rookie pass rusher we have seen, a guy that certainly made his mark already, not being shy in front of the microphone in a way some of his veteran teammates may advise against.
Well, I mean, he's not the first to say that about Eagle fans. Having spent most of my career in Philadelphia in the old Vet Stadium in the 700 level, fans, they're very boisterous. They're very loyal to their team. Sometimes too loyal, as made the headlines that one Eagle fan that was saying the awful things to the Green Bay Packer lady, and he got fired from his job and banned from the from Eagle games. He said out loud what a lot of people think. I love the Eagle fans, especially playing there. I thought they were great, but they can be a bit boisterous.
You know what? At the very least, Jared Verse is writing a check that his ass will have to cash, because he is going to get ready to go up against Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata and these great Eagles offensive tackles that I'm sure will not take kindly to this and will take every chance they get to remind him of that. Speaking of offensive linemen, by the way, earlier in the show when we were talking about the Detroit Lions, you and I actually missed this on the injury report here, and a couple of folks listening on YouTube alerted us to the fact Kevin Zeitler actually already ruled out for the Detroit Lions at offensive guard. So going to be dealing with a backup situation there. Obviously, for some people, that could change the equation a little bit, even though that line overall has continued to be one of the best in football. But wanted to make sure everyone had accurate information there. As Dad Kevin Zeitler, who remember last year was a star on the offensive line late in his career for the Baltimore Ravens, and has come over and been as productive for this year's version of the Lions. So big loss for them, no doubt.
Yeah, pulled his hamstring in the last game against Minnesota. Christian Mahogany will get the start at right guard. Mahogany's first start was in week 16. He filled in for Graham Glasgow at left guard. Actually did well. Gave up one pressure and 33 pass block attempts, and according to the coaches, played well. So the rookie Mahogany gets the start at right guard for one of the best offensive lines in all of football.
The Lions offensive line room smells like rich mahogany, and I'm sure there are many leather-bound books there as well. Yes. Speaking of rich folk stuff, Dad, new leagues are all the rage right now. We've obviously got the unrivaled women's 3-on-3 league that's getting ready to start here shortly, and apparently some other folks want to get in on the action here too. LeBron James business manager Maverick Carter has reportedly been enlisted as an advisor by a group of investors looking to raise $5 billion and form an international basketball league that would try and rival the NBA, sources tell ESPN, and first reported by Bloomberg on Thursday. Now, the league would look to have 6 men's teams and 6 women's teams playing games around the world. And, Dad, they're trying to enlist money from between sovereign wealth funds, private equity funds here, trying to go out here and do this. I have my reservations in general, Dad, anytime the idea is more opportunity for private equity and sovereign wealth funds that we have seen run leagues like the Live Golf League around the world, putting them in charge of this and trying to saturate the market with more basketball content. What do you think about this idea, and do you think it's got any headway?
Well, I don't think it's going to rival the NBA, and that's what they're looking to do. And currently, private equity funds and those funds you're talking about are limited to a 20% stake in NBA teams and are not allowed to serve in governing bodies, so they won't be able to have a voice. They wouldn't be able to have a voice in the NBA, much different in this proposed new league. LeBron James not involved in this at all. This is all Maverick Carter, who's obviously associated with LeBron. I don't – listen – we always talk about opportunities for other players, and we know in baseball they have a lot of leagues, basketball there are overseas leagues. So I'm always happy, especially in football where there are really not a lot of leagues, when there are opportunities for others who can't make the top league to be able to play. Do I see this rivaling the NBA? No, I don't. But you know, is this a way for others to continue playing in their career, to have another stepping stone to possibly get to the NBA? Sure. I mean, I'm all for that. But do I mean, they're actually going up against the NBA. You know, people are going to say the NBA ratings are down. Maybe this new league thinks it's time to make a move to kind of step in. But again, it's an around the world league. It's not just in the U.S. league like the NBA is. So I don't see it becoming a real threat to the NBA, but I do see it as opportunity for guys to continue to play.
Well, the only thing that is interesting to me in here is once you involve sovereign wealth funds and private equity, in my mind, I'm always a little bit leery of what the tactics and goals will be. And you do wonder, and this is kind of the thing we talked about coming off of the live golf experiences. Would anyone else step in and try and run a similar playbook if you were someone looking to sports wash your reputation and have a little bit more influence? Now, like the Saudi PIF fund and all those, they've been invested in a lot of major leagues around the world that you don't hear about. They just want the influence. They want the association. They want to be able to launder their reputation through a lot of those different leagues here. This would be a little bit more overt, but Dad, the tactic of, do you go in and try and money whip a bunch of superstars into defecting and saying, we will go and we will pay you handsomely like live. You probably won't be seen, just like the live golfers aren't in the lion's share of events that go on, maybe outside of, international or Olympic play that would happen every 4 years or every 2 years, counting the world championship. So would that be a tactic that someone else would employ is immediately where my mind went when I saw this headline.
Oh, they would have to employ that tactic. They would have to grab headlines by stealing great players and money whipping them. And it didn't work for golf, right? I mean, except for the players that went to live and got paid a bunch of money, they disappeared. But the game overall, I mean, live has not taken hold and rivaled the PGA Tour, but it has taken some of the stars of the PGA Tour and made them invisible. So overall, it has hurt the game of golf, quite honestly. They're still in the process of getting together. We have no idea what PGA Tour and Live Golf is going to look like as they try and have an agreement. But overall, it's hurt golf. So do you wonder, would the same thing happen here if you start to get stars that, I mean, there's already monster money going around in the NBA that would have to be unbelievable of what they would have to pay the stars, which is what live players are getting paid, hundreds of millions of dollars. You would have to do the same thing to some stars to get some name value to this new league to try and attract more attention.
Yeah, I again be curious because I think of it in a different way, sort of like what we saw with the G League Ignite and some of the different leagues that popped up to try and capitalize on a market inefficiency before college basketball players could receive NIL money and actually make a salary there. I'm trying to say, here's an alternative for you that we can position ahead of these other things because of what we can offer you. Do they try and do this with other players internationally who are looking for more exposure to get to the NBA? Do they try and target maybe some of the young stars in overseas leagues that eventually go on to the NBA here and get to them first? I don't know what it looks like, but again, openly positioning this as a deal to try and rival the NBA, because we've seen, right, for the NFL, the Alliance of American Football, the UFL, the XFL, all these leagues have very clearly positioned themselves as a spring antidote, a feeder league into this. They want to exist in the same ecosystem, but as a symbiote. They don't want to come in here and try and be the apex predator. This one, at least right now, the early report says, hey, we want to try and challenge them. And even if you're talking about dipped NBA ratings, that's a tall order for the most popular basketball league on earth.
And you wonder, you sit there and you talk about the golf and live. Live just signed a deal with Fox. So they're trying to up the ante of being seen, because you're right. It was a league that basically disappeared. Nobody watched it. Sometimes you couldn't find it, but if they get a deal with Fox and whatever stations they're going to put it on, FS1 or whatever, that may get more visual. But I'm still wondering what the agreement between Live and the PGA would be as they battle head to head with stars. But overall, I do not see this rivaling the NBA. I think the NBA has been established too long, and to come in and just try and rival the NBA, I think would be very difficult to do.
I am just worried that more people are going to try and do the live thing, because there's a lot of people with a lot of money out there that don't actually care about sports, but see the stranglehold that it has on all of us and are going to try and do bad things with it. Again, not to totally throw the baby out with the bathwater on this one, if that phrase even applies, and I don't think it does, but just something to keep an eye on in this situation, as again, Maverick Carter being a name that's at least been listed as someone to, help advise them on this, knowing his cachet and respect around NBA circles, obviously his longtime association with LeBron James as well, all important in this conversation. Dad, we did want to talk about and pay our respects to a legend in the world of sports elsewhere, though. If we're going to talk about the things that are great about sports, the long-standing relationship you can have with some of the voices around sports is always something at or near the top of that. And we lost a legend in that regard yesterday as Bob Uecker, the longtime Milwaukee Brewers announcer, passed away at the age of 90 after a battle with small cell lung cancer that he had apparently been fighting since early in 2023. Dad, he took over as the team announcer for the Brewers in 1971. He's obviously part of popular zeitgeist, his role in Major League, some of his lines there as the broadcaster in that movie and other shows. You actually stole a show from Bob Uecker back in the day, so shame on you, but a guy that you saw the outpouring of support and love from around Major League Baseball for so many people that loved one of the true incredible personalities of the sport is a testament to a life well lived of a man that will be dearly missed by this sport and by sports in general.
I mean, made a living on being so self-deprecating. I played ball from 62 to 67. His career batting average was 200, and he made sure everybody knew about it. He was with his self-deprecating style. He was on Johnny Carson late night talk show over 100 times. I mean, and then obviously the acting and broadcasting career, won the Ford C. Frick Award, recognizing a broadcasting career in the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2003. And his Hall of Fame speech was iconic. Just hilarious, had everybody absolutely in stitches. And his role as Harry Doyle in the Major League trilogy was just fantastic. He was on the show recurring in Mr. Belvedere, a sitcom, hosted blooper shows, like you said. He hosted a blooper show that changed its name to something I took over. It was Bob Uecker's Wacky World of Sports.
Yeah, and then you stole it from Bob Uecker.
I didn't steal it from Bob. It was Bob Uecker's Wacky World of Sports that became the lighter side of sports that I ended up hosting. I didn't. They asked me to do it, and I did it. I mean, I wasn't like openly stealing it from Bob Uecker. He wasn't doing it anymore. The dude had other great things to go on and do. And being a broadcaster for so many years with Milwaukee as a statue outside the stadium, was in the Miller Lite commercials. I mean, just unbelievably popular with his funny, self-deprecating style. Just an absolute legend, from a player to an actor to a broadcaster. What a great life lived. Passed away yesterday at 90 years old. So a life definitely worth celebrating, no doubt about it.
Yeah, Mr. Baseball himself here, that just a bit outside. It gets uttered so much. I'm sure most people now that do it, especially, my generation and younger, there are some that probably don't even realize that they're quoting a line uttered by Bob Uecker. And you saw the outpouring yesterday. Everyone around Major League Baseball, I saw Christian Yelich, the longtime Milwaukee Brewers star, had a really emotional post talking about his relationship with Bob Uecker, the friendship that they were able to develop over years. And you just see, again, in a sport in baseball where the intimacy and the relationship between the people that talk about the sport and the people that listen and watch these games, the amount of time, especially pre-pitch clock, that you would spend with someone's voice like that in your ear, it's just a really special relationship. It's something that Bob really took seriously and made the most of there. So again, rest in peace to Bob Uecker, an incredible life lived. Obviously thoughts and prayers are with his family and the people that knew him most there. But hopefully they can have some peace as now an all-time legend lays to rest there. We will get back to the rest of the world of sports here coming up in the next segment. Hall of Famer Ed Reed going to join us and talk a little bit more about the divisional round this weekend next. And Baltimore Ravens legend Ed Reed, kind enough to join us on behalf of DirecTV here. Ed, good morning. How you doing?
I'm good, DK. Good day to you, man.
Good day to you, too. And congratulations. We got a lot we want to get to you with here over the course. We're excited to have you and hear about, what you got going on with the partnership, too. But congratulations. We are a father-son show here. And I know you've been working at your son's high school for a while around the team, but officially accepting the offensive coordinator role here. So congrats. How fired up are you guys to be able to go to work together like this?
Excited, man. We've been talking almost every day, trying to implement some stuff to him. I'm calling him, telling him I want him to do this and do this, So it's good, man. It's already kind of activated,
Yeah, listen, we've seen a number of former players from Deshaun Jackson, Eddie George, Chris Dishman, Michael Vick, jumping into the coaching thing. I know you had the flirtation with Bethune-Cookman that didn't work out, but is this something down the road when your son's done in high school that you're looking to jump to college?
Definitely, Mike. I've been doing it. Like, I actually been coaching before all this happened. Like, I coached in Buffalo, obviously known as a player coach when I played. My last year with the Jets in Houston was all about administrative work for the most part, and still coaching. Then chief of staff at the University of Miami, where I still was coaching there. My foundation. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, no, I was going to say one of the biggest feathers in your cap you can get is when Bill Belichick talks about how you fooled him as a coach on defense. I mean, I think that's all you need is that soundbite as your resume to get a coaching job.
I appreciate that, Mike. I thought so too, man. But it's been some loops that I got to jump through, man. It's been real disrespectful. And I think that's been the way, like, for a lot of players over the years. Nobody really talks about it because, usually when you talk about things of such, and tell the truth, they kick you down and it's hard for you to get jobs, you get blackballed, those type of things or whatever. But needless to say, man, the truth needs to be said, right? So, I think guys are starting to realize, like, nah, I'm going to do this. The doors are open even more so now. So that's why I think you're starting to see guys get hired. Guys have been having foundation, working in communities, working with kids for years. Like, I've been saying this for years that we never really point out how much positive stuff NFL players or players are doing in general, specifically for our league. I think other leagues do a decent job, and we've gotten better over the years since I've come. With Play 60 and things like that. Because I work with the NFL and kids. But we could do so much more, and I think that's what you're seeing, Mike.
Yeah, certainly starting to see that more and more. You're right with guys not only having that work, but then having that parlayed into some of these opportunities to reach out and teach. And that's always the thing I'm most curious about is sometimes, my dad played with Reggie White and always talked about this, but with some all-time great players, they're so great and some of the things you can do are so unique. It's hard to teach that to somebody else here. You mentioned teaching has always kind of been something that you've enjoyed here. Have you ever found it difficult, considering how great you were as a player, to be able to try and impart those same lessons onto players that might not have your same ability or dedication to the game?
Yeah, man. I mean, I had Shockey Brown or Darius Webb in my DB room, man. I had Terrell Suggs as a teammate, and Ray Lewis and guys like that, man. So, it's all about the circle that you have, right? Because all those guys had a lot of part in the player who I was, right? Because we helped each other. You know what I'm saying? Now, they were young guys, Suggs and those guys, and we had to impart wisdom on them just like Ray imparted wisdom on me, him and Jonathan Ogden. So it's about the company you keep, who you surround yourself with. And Mike knows it, right? Because they have some players that comes to the team that you understand, like, you got to weed out guys too. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody's going to make it. That's why it took us so long to win the championship, because we didn't always have those guys on the team. Sometimes we had guys just about their money, and you're going to have that in this generation now, especially with the NIL. Like, people are chasing the bag and chasing money versus just chasing that love and having that love for the game, and everything else works out in the end. You know what I'm saying? Because you realize money only is, only going to take you so far and give you so much happiness. They can never exchange, what's over this shoulder right here. Like the things we've done as a team. And I could just imagine, like you said, the story your dad would tell you about Reggie White. Like, you can't take that away, like, that's what it's about.
It is an incredible thing to play with one of the all-time greats, and you certainly had a few of them on your defense. And obviously, greatness sees greatness. In the Baltimore Ravens team of today, at a position that you played, the safety position, you see Kyle Hamilton. I mean, just playing some incredible ball. What do you see when you see him playing that safety position?
I see what the game is supposed to be about. You know, what it's about, you know, the game we love. Like, that's what you see in certain players. That's why you continue to watch it, because certain players are still have that passion and fortitude, right? They go at it that way. You know, I see Kyle has a lot of that old school football in him. You know, I think guys like myself look for that. You know, look for that old school football player, you know, still out there. That's what I love about Kyle, man. They're moving him around a good bit, you know, so I love it.
No, they're giving him a great opportunity to impact the game in a lot of ways. Same could be said for the quarterback on the other side, Lamar Jackson, en route to what could be his third MVP this season. When you watch Lamar Jackson and some of these modern quarterbacks here, as a guy who used to be tasked with stopping great quarterbacks here, what do you see that makes guys like him such a difficult mismatch for opposing defenses?
Man, his patience, pocket presence has went up tremendously. I always talked about pocket presence with Brady and Peyton and those type of guys. Like, that makes a difference. He's not just escaping the pocket, running all the time. He's extending the pocket more, and that's difficult to deal with. Guys like Roethlisberger and you know, Josh Allen is another one who does that. You know, so extending that pocket is something that defenses don't always practice for. We don't just be out there and like go practice plaster, you know. So that's something you got to have in your head, ingrained in it, you know. So you're gonna see that come this weekend on both sides. You're gonna be like, how did he get open, right? The guys fell asleep during the scramble.
So you were your first round pick in 2002, about 22 years ago. What's the biggest difference in the game you see from when you first got in it to now?
Man, I was coming in with Hall of Famers. I came in with Julius Peppers. You know, like, you're looking at draft classes now and how these guys just fall off, and, you know. But I don't know, man. It's a little different with the rules and all that, the NIL and stuff. So I think for me, Mike, man, a lot of it's like passion. You know, like, just the passion of the game, knowing the game. You know, you see a lack thereof. You know, I feel like guys are missing steps along the way because other things, intangibles are there that's distracting them from the love of the game.
Well, certainly, you know all about the love of the game. And I want to talk to you about the partnership you got going on today for fans that love the game here. You're here on behalf and in support of DirecTV and their new My Sports package. So what can you tell us about that package and what it has to offer passionate fans?
Yeah, I mean, for over 30 years, DirecTV been providing this, you know, packages and streaming opportunities for everybody. It's a one-of-a-kind package where it's all sports on DirecTV. All right, DirecTVstream.com is where you can go and get it. You can go and look for it, and yeah, for the sports fan who loves sports, this is the place to be.
Sounds like a sports junkie's dream.
It is, definitely. I believe so.
A sport to finish off the show in the week the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories. Send you off into the weekend. Good divisional round weekend. Make sure, as always, you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. And watch us here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. GoJo and Golic there. All of our full interviews posted there. The live show as well as great clips and more. Check that out there. Hit the bell so you know when we're going live every morning. But if you got to miss us live or any of our great guests, shout out to Notre Dame quarterback Riley Leonard for stopping by, as well as the man you just saw, the Hall of Famer Ed Reed. If you miss either of those, check them out wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show here. And Dad, we roll along with this, that, and the third, and we start with this here. We know the Caitlin Clark effect has been felt all across, forget just women's professional basketball, women's college basketball, but sport in general. It is now expanding to the Fever's plans to develop a new $78 million training center in downtown Indianapolis here. You've seen some of the renderings here right now, but Dad, the Fever, who enjoyed a windfall of fans coming to their home games, invading other arenas to see Caitlin Clark, now going to make sure that these players have everything they need to go and turn this year's return to the postseason into something that happens more frequently.
Yeah, $78 million facility, all privately funded by the people who, the Pacer Sports and Entertainment, the Fever owners. 2 full-size courts, strength and conditioning facilities, wellness rooms with infrared light therapy, hydrotherapy pools, even a podcast and content production studio, which every place needs now, living in the day we're in. But yeah, it just goes to show again that this is the Caitlin Clark effect. They made the playoffs, went out in the first round, but expectations are certainly going to be higher. But it's just continuing to build on the popularity of women's sports, and certainly how the WNBA is growing with the college players that are playing now that will eventually be in the WNBA. It's just going to continue to grow.
Yeah, we know the WNBA's growth overall, viewership and attendance up 47%, but the Fever specifically saw nearly a 320% increase to a league-leading average of more than 17,000 fans per game. So it's been sensational to watch here, and now those players, and it's what we've always talked about. You know, there's going to be a discussion had, and we'll probably talk about next week, an extended conversation into some of the things happening with Title IX right now and the revenue sharing in college sports, and the importance of still platforming and promoting women's athletics at a level on par with its male counterparts. Because we've seen with women's basketball in particular, if you show it, they will come. There's been a great product. There have been great players. And now with the platform, we're seeing them have an even bigger opportunity to go out here and then be treated like the players and like the professionals that they are. So kudos to the Fever brass for making this happen here. And kudos for the Fever players for making this a place that people want to continue to invest in and show off here. From this to that we go, Dad, in the college football playoff national championship coming up this weekend. We're going to see everyone go down to Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, where we know one of their hallmarks has been the very reasonably priced food fare at that stadium. $3.50 for chips, $3.50 for candy, $2 super pretzel, and $9 family-sized popcorn and more. But unfortunately, Dad, no Pop-Tarts shown here. You're not going to be able to partake in the fodder and the fare from the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Although, as we know, the College Football Hall of Fame is now in Atlanta. It used to be in South Bend, Indiana. Fun fact for everybody. But the Pop-Tarts Bowl trophy will actually be holed up in the College Football Hall of Fame, making its appearance there as a part of a temporary exhibit at the national championship that's scheduled to run through March of 2025. So if you want to see the Toaster Trophy, you got your chance coming up this weekend in Atlanta.
Yeah, you just won't see it at the game, and it is reasonably priced. I'm looking forward to getting a Yingling. I am a big fan of that beer, so I will be partaking of that, as I will be there as a Notre Dame, as a fan, not working at all. So I look forward to taking a part in some of this menu.
The meals at the national championship include buffalo cauliflower wrap, which I don't hate. Chili cheese dog, probably going to be the medicine there. Cajun black bean burrito, pepperoni pizzas, chicken tendies. All right, we're cooking with gas here. I do remember, Dad, Mercedes-Benz was one of the first stadiums I went to that was among the new NFL stadiums. I was there for the CFP national title the year Tua was inserted late in the game and helped Alabama beat Georgia in that national championship overtime thriller. And I remember going around the stadium. It was one of those where they have built it in such a way where I believe you are never more than something like 6 feet from an outlet in the arena. Because again, to your point, in the times that we live in right now, making sure you got the device fully charged at all times is a priority. And so you've got the opportunity to do that at that stadium, especially if you're going there to watch this game and want to get the waning moments of it filmed on your phone.
I may be looking forward to the frozen Arctic peach shake. That may be something I have to try. They also are going to serve hot chocolate because it's going to be cold as hell there. I guess cold as hell doesn't make sense. It's going to be really cold. Now, obviously, it's a dome stadium, but getting into the stadium and walking around, it's going to be friggin' cold there.
People say cold as hell all the time. You're not out of bounds for that. It's the irony of that. Did you just try and heat check cold as hell and make it literal?
Yeah, I did. Quite honestly, it doesn't make sense. So.
You know what's hot is inside the College Football Hall of Fame and a hot toasted Pop-Tart that you can have. I wonder if they will let people toast from the trophy as a part of the exhibit. If you're not doing that already, I would gladly pay a decent amount of money for the opportunity to go over to the College Football Hall of Fame. I'm getting there Saturday. I'm going to have some time in the early afternoon. I may have to make my voyage. I've not been to the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta yet. We used to go all the time when it was in South Bend, but I want to go down there, and I feel like I, of all people, need to meet the Pop-Tarts Bowl trophy here. Cole Kublik and that crew were great shepherds for the trophy, but this is also something very spiritually on brand for me. So we're going to figure out a way to make that happen over the weekend as we roll into Atlanta and get ready to go. Dad, let's get to the third, though. A travesty, a sham, and a mockery. A Travis sham mockery took place at some Dunkin' Donuts in the Midwest and the American Southwest, as across Nebraska, New Mexico, Omaha, and as well here, Dunkin' Donuts apparently ran out of donuts at these restaurants here due to a manufacturing error. These locations were not able to offer donuts, munchkins, or donut holes throughout much of this weekend here. And while, Dad, we know they dropped the donuts, it's just America runs on Dunkin' now, even on the signs. I feel like you still have that as a built-in part of the expectation. We are used to, and McDonald's, God love them, but they have built into the model that the ice cream machine is barely ever going to be working. So you don't expect it when you're going to McDonald's. You expect the donuts rolling into Dunkin' here. So this is foul, and they need to fix that ASAP and try and figure out how they are going to make our friends in Nebraska whole after this.
As was quoted by a person, that's tragic. It is tragic. Now, they do have signs up. It was a manufacturing issue. Some still had the donut holes, the munchkins. Others did not. I just can't imagine going to a Dunkin' Donuts and not getting a donut. Now, I like the Dunkin' coffee better than Starbucks coffee, so I will go to Dunkin' just for the coffee. But rarely will I go just for the coffee. I will have a donut or two or a muffin or two as well. But I do enjoy the Dunkin' coffee more than the Starbucks coffee.
My fat boy move from when I was in Pittsburgh, when I was going there for rookie camp and for training camp with the Pittsburgh Steelers, there was a Dunkin' Donuts downtown on the way to work that I would stop at. I would go and I would order a coffee and a breakfast sandwich. And while I was waiting for the breakfast sandwich in line, I would order 2 donuts and I would eat those to pass the time while I waited, because that is life when you were 300 pounds. So I miss those days here. This only affected about 4% of stores. And so thankfully, not a lot of people had to grapple with the reality of not being able to wait for their sandwich by mainlining a couple of donuts in the process there. Good solid donut, though, Dad. Kind of like the Starbucks coffee, how they burn it so it tastes the same everywhere. Dunkin' Donuts, the donuts aren't ornate. They're not anything fancy, but they're good, dependable.
No.
Great ways to start your day if you just need something to kickstart it a little bit.
I think that's the word, dependable. Dependable donuts, dependable muffins, nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary, just good, clean donuts, which I dig. Donuts and a Dunkin' coffee is a great way to start the day.
You get a chocolate glaze and an iced coffee, you're going to be able to tackle most anything that comes your way in the morning. So fix it, Dunkin' Donuts. Fix it for our friends in the Midwest and the Southwest so that they can get back to running on the fine stuff you're slinging there. We hope you've enjoyed running on us this morning. If you have, download, subscribe, rate, review the show, leave it a 5-star rating, and watch us back next week to break down the whole divisional round. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you then.